There's one behavior, one silent, uncomfortable, undeniable behavior that exposes fake people instantly. It's not what they say. It's not how they act. It's not the tone of their voice. It's their eyes. The eyes never lie, especially when someone is hiding envy, resentment, or that quiet bitterness that grows inside. People who refuse to do the work required to evolve. Fake people may smile at you. They may compliment you. They may pretend they're rooting for you. But if you look closely, you'll see something off, something dim, something that doesn't match the warmth of their words. Their eyes don't celebrate you. They don't vibrate light. They don't expand. They stay flat, cold, almost disconnected. Because while the words applaud you, the soul behind the eyes rejects you. Envy is not admiration twisted. Envy is conflict, a war between wanting your results and avoiding your effort. The envious person wants to have what you have, wants to be who you've become, wants the life you built, but they don't want to walk the path you walked. They don't want to face their shadows. They don't want to do the inner work. So they end up living in a constant state of emotional dissonance. And that dissonance shows itself most clearly in the eyes. Because envy is not just an emotion, it's a frequency. A dense, heavy, corrosive frequency. It dims the soul. It steals clarity. It dries the joy. It contaminates relationships. The person begins to decay from the inside out, and you can see the erosion reflected in their gaze. The eyes look darker, less alive, less honest, less connected to anything pure. But here's the interesting part. You feel this long before you consciously recognize it. You might not know why the person makes you uncomfortable. You might not understand why their presence feels off. You might not be able to explain the strange tension, but your intuition feels it. Your body reacts before your mind finds words. And there's a reason for that. People who are waking up, people who are on a path of self-awareness, emotional healing, alignment, truth, develop a natural radar for incoherence. When you start knowing yourself deeply, when you clean your emotional field, when you align your life with values and purpose, your perception sharpens. You become more sensitive not because you're fragile, but because your inner world is finally becoming coherent. Coherence recognizes incoherence immediately. The more awake you become, the more clearly you feel when something is off. You notice subtle tension behind a smile. You feel heaviness behind a compliment. You sense darkness behind admiration. You pick up micro-expressions you never used to see. You read emotional temperatures like weather forecasts. Your intuition becomes a finely tuned instrument. And people who aren't aligned, people who refuse to grow, who avoid their shadows, who reject self-responsibility, stand out, sometimes painfully so. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to admit. When you heal, you become a threat to people who refuse to heal. When you grow, you mirror their stagnation. When you rise, you expose their fears. When you evolve, you challenge their denial. When you shine, you illuminate their shadows. Not because you're trying to, not because you think you're better, but because authenticity agitates those who are living in self-abandonment. This is why envy targets you when you're awakening. Your light irritates the ego of someone who doesn't want to change. Your discipline irritates their avoidance. Your clarity irritates their confusion. Your purpose irritates their emptiness. And the person who envies you rarely shows it openly. They rarely confront you. They rarely speak the truth. Instead, they hide behind flattery, behind friendliness, behind polite admiration. But the eyes, they betray the entire act. The eyes expose the sadness of someone who abandoned themselves. The eyes expose the resentment of someone who refuses to grow. The eyes expose the hunger of someone who wants your results without your journey. The eyes expose the contradiction between what they say and what they actually feel. And if you ignore this, if you keep people like this close, their energy begins to interfere with your field. Not mysteriously, not magically, but vibrationally. The mismatch in frequency creates friction. Your path gets heavier. Your clarity weakens. Your motivation feels drained. Your mood becomes unstable. Small things begin to go wrong. Projects stall. Plans feel blurry. Relationships get confusing. It's not the person's actions. It's their vibration that disrupts you. When someone secretly resents you, you feel it long before you understand it, because envy carries a density that presses against your field. This is why you must stay aware. This is why your intuition matters. This is why your radar exists. Your awakening is your protection. And the first step of that protection is simple. Stop believing the words. Start watching the eyes. And if this first insight already shook you, wait until you understand what happens. The moment your mind stops, running on the default settings, that's where everything you thought was reality starts to fall apart. When you finally recognize this mismatch in someone's eyes, something important happens. You start understanding why your energy reacts before your mind does. Your intuition isn't trying to scare you. It's trying to protect you. And the more awake you become, the faster this protection activates. It's a sign your inner world is becoming coherent enough to notice what's out of tune around you. You weren't imagining the heaviness. You weren't exaggerating the tension. You weren't being dramatic. Your body was simply responding to a vibration that didn't match yours. People who carry envy, resentment, or internal dishonesty release a kind of emotional static, something that irritates your field, the same way a wrong note irritates a trained ear. And here's the truth most people never learn. Someone's frequency affects you long before their behavior does. You can be in the same room, listening to their words, but your nervous system is listening to their energy. When someone's eyes show emptiness while their words show enthusiasm, your body knows. It's the contradiction that gives them away. It's the emotional dissonance leaking through the cracks of the performance. And that dissonance feels like a subtle pressure, a slight suffocation, a quiet draining, sometimes even a sudden stiffness in your chest or a shift in your breathing. These sensations aren't random. They're signals. Your intuition has been trying to talk to you for years. You're only now starting to understand its language. What most people don't realize is that fake people don't need to act maliciously to harm you. Their internal chaos is enough. Their unresolved pain spills out. Their envy vibrates like a low-frequency fog. And when you're awakening, you can feel it with an uncomfortable accuracy. You start noticing the way they look at you when they think you're not watching. You sense the forced tone in their compliments. You feel the hesitation in their smile. You catch the micro-frown before they force it into a grin. You see the flash of sadness or bitterness that crosses their eyes when you talk about your achievements or your joy. And the more aligned you become, the louder these signals get. Because awakening sharpens perception, and perception reveals truths that were always there, hidden under politeness and performance. You begin to understand who's genuinely happy for you and who's secretly hoping you fall. You begin to decode emotional intentions without needing explanations. You begin to see through people with a clarity that can be both empowering and painful. Empowering, because you finally understand what your energy has been trying to tell you. Painful, because you realize how few people are actually aligned with your happiness. But here's something crucial. Not every heavy gaze is envy, and not every fake smile is malicious. Sometimes people are drowning in their own emotional storms. Sometimes they admire you but feel unworthy. Sometimes they want to change but don't know how. Sometimes their heaviness isn't about you, it's about their own unresolved inner world. This is why discernment is essential. Awakening isn't about labeling everyone around you as toxic. It's about recognizing which connections nourish your energy and which ones drain it. It's about understanding who elevates your frequency and who pulls it down. It's about identifying where your light expands and where it dims. And it's about staying conscious enough to protect your inner world from frequencies that aren't compatible with the person you're becoming. Because here's the real danger of keeping a fake person close. Their energy doesn't just weigh on you. It begins to blur your intuition. You start doubting yourself. You start questioning your worth. You start feeling unexplainable anxiety. You start losing clarity. You start shrinking to avoid making them uncomfortable. And little by little, without noticing, you begin to dim your own light to fit into their shadow. This is how environments shape consciousness. This is how relationships influence identity. This is how someone's emotional density becomes your emotional exhaustion. And if you're in the middle of your awakening process, this is especially important. Your frequency is rising. Your perception is expanding. Your emotional field is becoming more sensitive. You can't afford to stay close to people who sabotage their own growth, because they will inevitably sabotage yours. This is not cruelty. This is not ego. This is not superiority. It's protection. A flower can't bloom in poisoned soil. A mind can't evolve in the presence of emotional chaos. A heart can't expand around those who fear expansion. And when someone envies you, they don't envy your possessions. They envy your courage. They envy your clarity. They envy your consistency. They envy the discipline that they themselves avoid. They envy the inner work you've done. They envy the peace you built with your own hands. Envy isn't about wanting your life. It's about resenting the part of themselves that refuses to change. And that resentment leaks through the eyes every single time. But here's what makes everything shift. The moment you recognize this pattern, you reclaim your power. You stop absorbing their energy. You stop internalizing their projection. You stop allowing their dissonance to interfere with your path. You start standing in your truth instead of shrinking to keep others comfortable. You begin to see that your awakening is not just a journey, it's a shield. And the more aligned you become, the brighter your frequency gets, and the easier it is to see who can't stand the light. You're not imagining it. You're not being harsh. You're not being judgmental. You're finally seeing clearly. Once you start seeing clearly, everything around you begins to shift. You no longer feel confused by people's contradictions. You no longer second-guess the heaviness you sense in their presence. You no longer ignore the discomfort your intuition has been trying to show you for years. You stop doubting what your body already knows, because clarity is liberation, and awakening is clarity in motion. When you understand how envy operates, you stop absorbing it. You stop letting it distort your path. You stop carrying emotional weights that were never yours to hold. You stop mistaking someone's jealousy for friendship. You stop calling someone supportive when their eyes show anything but support. You stop making excuses for people who repeatedly fail to celebrate your growth. You begin to respect what your intuition has been trying to tell you. And when that happens, you start building a completely different life. One that is aligned, protected, centered, and guided by your own inner truth. You stop giving access to people who drain your spirit. You stop tolerating environments that suffocate your energy. You stop forcing yourself into connections that pull you away from the person you are becoming. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Not everyone deserves access to your evolution. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. Not everyone can handle your awakening. Not everyone can rise with the version of you that chooses growth. Not everyone can respond to your healing with love. Some people only knew how to love the broken version of you. The version who doubted, the version who apologized for shining, the version who dimmed their own light to keep everyone comfortable. But you're not that person anymore. You're changing, you're expanding, you're waking up. And when you wake up, you start feeling who shouldn't walk with you anymore. Not out of anger, not out of judgment, but out of alignment. Your soul becomes selective, your energy becomes discerning, your heart becomes wiser. You realize that peace is expensive, and not everyone wants to pay the price of their own healing. You realize that authenticity intimidates those who built their identity on performance. You realize that self-responsibility scares people who rely on blaming others for their unhappiness. You realize that truth threatens those living in denial. And above all, you realize that the person who envies you isn't really jealous of your achievements. They're jealous of your freedom, the freedom you gained from facing yourself, the freedom you gained by doing the inner work they avoid, the freedom you gained by refusing to stay trapped in your old patterns, the freedom you gained by choosing consciousness over comfort. Your light reminds them of their unhealed parts. Your clarity reminds them of their confusion. Your courage reminds them of their excuses. Your evolution reminds them of their stagnation. And deep down, they know it. That's why their eyes betray them. That's why they can't hold your gaze without tightening something inside. That's why their words feel sweet, but their energy feels sour. That's why being near you makes them uncomfortable. They're looking at someone who chose to grow while they chose to stay the same. But here's the most important revelation. You don't owe your light to anyone who fears it. Your awakening isn't meant to be dimmed. Your growth isn't meant to be hidden. Your energy isn't meant to be drained. Your frequency isn't meant to be lowered for anyone's comfort. You are not here to fit inside someone else's unhealed world. You are here to rise into your own. And this is your turning point. Start trusting the look in their eyes more than the sound of their voice. Start protecting your peace with the same intensity you protect your dreams. Start honoring the intuition you've ignored for too long. Start choosing environments that make your light expand, not collapse. Because when you stay aligned, when you keep your frequency high, when you listen to your inner radar, fake people can't touch your path. Their envy can't find a place to attach. Their heaviness can't enter your field. Their dissonance can't interfere with your destiny. Awakening isn't just about knowing the truth. It's about becoming someone who can't be manipulated by what is false. So trust what you feel. Trust what your energy tells you. Trust the tightening in your chest, the shift in your breath, the heaviness behind someone's smile. Trust the eyes that don't match the words. Your intuition is not an alarm system. It's your inner compass. It's your protection. It's your power. And the more you follow it, the more your life becomes aligned with who you truly are, not who the world expected you to be. If you're waking up, if you're becoming more aware, if you're finally seeing things clearly, then this isn't a coincidence. It's an invitation to rise above the envy, the noise, the contradictions, the masks, and the emotional density that once held you back. And as you rise, you begin to understand the truth behind all of this. Your light was never the problem. It was always the revelation. And the right people the ones who are aligned with your growth, your purpose, your truth. They won't fear your light. They'll expand with it. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with us. This is Human Wave, where awakened minds rise into a life of wholeness and fulfillment.